LGBTQI, poor women, we need to be sure that we're actually taking steps forward and that we're not just being pacified with, passive legislation. So we'll see. I'm keeping my eye on that. I would love to hear what you all think about that law. Were you excited about it? Do you know, I know I have some viewers that are out on the East Coast. And so, do you know much about what is going on with that law, how it came to be? Please share. We are happy I want to have the conversation. Meet me over on Instagram. So shifting to the main segment, we are going to be talking about maternal health maternal mental health, because May is Maternal Mental Health Month. But before we go to the first segment, I want to just talk for a second about the other special segment that's going to be in our new format. So you've already seen the critical analysis segment in the first episode. This week, there is another critical analysis segment, but there is also the Ask Anya segment. And the Ask Anya segment is an opportunity for us to interact with one another. I want this to be an interactive podcast this time around. I'm excited to start having conversations that are reciprocal, right? And so one of the ways that we're going to do that is in this new Ask Anya segment. So the Ask Anya segment is an opportunity for you to write in with your questions about anything. I'm going to try my best. I like to think that I, have some good answers that I can provide. So if you have questions, especially anything women's health related, especially anything pregnancy and childbirth related, those are always welcome. But anything that's affecting Black mothers today, I want to have those conversations. I did get some feedback from the first episode about me emptying the nest, and I had some other moms who are going to be emptying their nest pretty soon reach out and have some dialogue about that. And it was really interesting just to see how we're all, in that same space and place and just trying to keep ourselves from crying. So you can send in your questions to the Instagram page, Doin Motherhood Podcast. And just send the DMs and we'll get you up on that next segment. All right. Well, this is May, and May is the month that we are bringing awareness about maternal mental health. And before I even dig into it, I want to talk about it from a different perspective. So I think a lot of times when we think about maternal mental health, the first thing that pops up in most people's minds, if I were teaching my class right now, I would say, what pops up in your mind? And the most thing that pops up in people's minds is postpartum depression. And so kind of really focusing in on the mindset of a mother during her pregnancy, going into that postpartum period, and what that looks like for her. How are her, how's her birth team and her village able to surround her and take care of her, and hopefully be there to see if anything happens, right? If anything does pop up in the mental health realm, if she's having postpartum anxiety or postpartum depression, if it does pop up, that she's got a team of people around her who can support her and who can get her to help if necessary. And so we tend to focus that conversation there. We still are not very comfortable having conversations about mental health in general. And then when we get into maternal mental health, it's a conversation that, I don't know, it's usually only had around women. We talk about it around certain news events, we talk about it. We'll talk about it in May, but I don't know that the conversation is a conversation that carries over beyond those of us who are in the healthcare, whether we're in healthcare industry or healthcare adjacent. And when I say healthcare adjacent, I mean people who work outside of the actual healthcare system, like birth workers, midwives, and doulas, and lactation consultants, those of us who may not be directly in the system, but we're working adjacent to it. It's not a conversation that we're having on an ongoing basis. And it certainly is a conversation that needs to grow beyond just that pregnancy period and that postpartum period. You know, I was thinking to myself the other day about just what we've been going through in this pandemic period. And I check in with my clients all the time about, you know, what their moods are throughout their pregnancy and what their moods are when they're in the postpartum. But as I was, you know, writing what I needed to write to do this podcast today, I was like, I don't check on my friends in that same way. You know, we talk and we're checking on each other's days and we're checking on each other's lives, but to sit down and say, you know, how is your mood? That type of check-in. That how is your mood? How are you feeling? How is life going for you for real underneath the surface, right? Not your boss said this, not your husband did that. Like, where are you? And so it made me think that we really don't carry that conversation past that first year that someone becomes a mom, or that first year after, you know, whether it's the first baby or the third baby, that we're not carrying that conversation forward. And as if mothers get it all in the first year, you know, like we go through a time, we might be having a hard time adjusting to our moods and adjusting to our new, you know, situation, or the transition in life that we're in. And then suddenly when the baby turns a year old, we just kind of snap out of it and we get back to work and we enjoy all the things that being a mother entails, and being a working mother entails, or being a stay-at-home mother entails. And we're not doing a great job at continuing that conversation. So I want this conversation to lean in that direction. What are we doing for the mothers beyond 1 year? So I want to share a couple of quotes, some statistics that I found. This first one comes from the Menninger Clinic, which is a clinic right here in Houston, Texas, that focuses on maternal mental health. And so this is what they said. It's no secret that psychological distress is high due to the COVID-19 outbreak. And now more than ever, there's a huge need for maternal wellness. In fact, a new research study authored by psychologists from the University of Calgary and the University of Manitoba found 44% of mothers with children aged 5 to 8 years old are experiencing depression. And 30% of those mothers are also experiencing anxiety. I just want to pause there for a second, and I'm going to run that back real quick. 44% of mothers with children between the ages of 5 and 8. That is almost half. That is a huge number of women who are experiencing depression and anxiety. The percentages, the quote goes on to say, the percentages are also elevated for mothers with children up to 18 months, as well as those with children 18 months to 4 years old. And so again, we're looking at a great deal of the population. We know that traditionally, and without getting into gender roles and all that stuff, but traditionally, the primary caregiver that the child is probably interacting the most with in their young life is their mother. And so that means that, you know, almost half a population of women are overwhelmed and depressed and experiencing anxiety, but they're doing all of that as they're still having to carry out not only being the role of mother, but being the role of whatever their profession may be, being the role to whatever other roles they play in their family system. So maybe they're the caretakers of elderly parents. Maybe they are also taking in, other family members' children, or somehow extending help outside of their own home to take care of other members of their family, being members of the community and the work that some of us do within our communities. And so this means that women are not showing up to any of those roles as whole individuals. And where it is most impactful when women don't show up as whole individuals is with their children. Moving on to the next bit of information I'd like to share with you. It actually comes from WebMD, and this was just printed 2 days ago on May 17th. So we're looking at the fact, WebMD tells us that death by suicide or overdose is a leading cause of death for women in the first year after they give birth, a new analysis shows. Many of these deaths may be preventable, said Adrienne Griffin, who has a master's degree in public policy and is executive director of the Maternal Mental Health Leadership Alliance. And again, that comes from WebMD. And so this new analysis shows, and this is coming out again, this information is coming to us in 2021. I don't know exactly when this information was gathered, but if this has been information collected since the pandemic, if it was collected before the pandemic is what I'm trying to say. If it was collected before the pandemic, this is especially troubling, knowing that so much more was put on top of mothers, or has been put on top of mothers in the last year. And so if we just look at pandemic mothering, what we've had to do in the last year of this pandemic, we all know it. I'm preaching to the choir, but let's talk about that. I want to dig deeper into that piece. Like I said, I'm preaching to the choir, but I really want us to take a moment to really account for everything that we've been doing in the last year. Because one thing I know about myself as a woman and a mother, one thing I know about the women who are in my community who are women and mothers, and I'm sure it's the same for the majority of you out there, we have a tendency to just do what we got to do. And we have to buckle down and, put our big girl panties on and just get into it day after day after day. And so just thinking about, first of all, everybody's children came home for a majority of the school year last year, right? Everyone's children were home. A lot of mothers were coming home, working from home, having to deal with either taking over the teaching or having their children interface with school via Zoom, while she was also having to interface with work via Zoom. And so you're playing a double role, and it's more than a double role because we already know moms are everything, right? We're the mom, the teacher, the cook, the counselor, the nurse, the chauffeur. We're all of those things, right? But while we're all in our homes, those of us who work never really got a break or consideration about what else you were having to take care of in the home. Our job still had expectations of us to show up and produce and do all the things. And then I remember seeing stories, across social media and even in the news about mothers who were saying that their jobs were like condemning them for hearing children in the background. So where'd you want the kids to go? Be put in a closet? We can't do that to the babies. So, there was just not there was the flexibility in being able to stay at home during a major global pandemic, but still not the understanding and the flexibility in terms of what that actually meant for those employees. And then that's kind of in general. And then, like what it takes to keep our household safe.